Welcome back, Principal Matters podcast listeners. This is episode 488, and I'm here with Will Parker. Will, Palo Alto Advisory.
Oh my
today.
gosh, Jen,
what
I can't.
Is that?
My mind's just like I can't. I'm so excited. I'm about to explode because Brent Kline, principal Palo Alto High School, has a principal advisory council, students across his campus that he meets with regularly to advise him, his leaders, and teachers on the outcomes of their school. And he invited 3 of his amazing students to sit down to interview for our show. So I cannot wait for Principal Matters listeners to hear this conversation. But before we do that, you brought this question to us from a listener. So why don't you introduce the Q&A part of our show?
Right. I got this email from a colleague in a district actually very near mine. And I don't know, Will. I don't know. We have about 5 minutes and we need about 5 hours for this. But the question is this. As a system leader, how do you encourage teachers in high-performing schools to go beyond things like, well, my students do really well on the tests, or even administrators who say, what's the problem? Have you seen our test scores? And actually aim for instruction that really stretches students' thinking, their agency, their intellectual rigor. This listener's really curious about how to do this when current success metrics and evaluations tend to really reinforce the status quo. And I feel this question in my soul. This is a really good question.
I love this question so much. And I just want to, first of all, say thank you to the listener who sent this to us. And I also want to say, and this isn't to dodge the question because I will respond to it. I think part of the answer is going to come in this interview you're going to hear today, because that this whole idea of stretching students' thinking and their agency and their intellectual rigor, guess who wants that more than anyone? The students, not just those of us that are evaluating them or trying to lead their growth, and not just their parents. Students want that. And so I think the most important question we have to be able to ask ourselves when we're meeting with teachers, when we're talking about student learning, when we're either evaluating, observing, or coaching, is how do we come back to that essential question as a part of our conversation, which is not just, wow, great, I love these test scores, but also exploring in what ways are our students experiencing stretching in their thinking and their agency and their intellectual rigor. So I'm just going to start there, Jen. And I know these are only 5-minute Q&A, so we won't give it justice, but go ahead and add some of your thoughts too.
Well, this question came in last night and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. So thanks a lot to the person who sent it. There's a lot of things I want to say. I want to say, are your kids ready for the next step, whatever that is in their life? If you generally feel that they do, that's another metric that's important. I've talked to students in high performing schools that say, I was in a high performing school. My test scores were high and I was ready. I really was. And I think that's important. So another thing is you've got to remember too, the teenage brain. Sometimes they have only so much to give and they might perform well on a test. And then they don't necessarily want to sit around and, go through additional methodology intellectually. Let's remember they're kids, I guess is what I'm saying. But then I'll also say, I think a lot of stretching with rigor can happen through conversation. I think, just standing in front of a group of kids and saying, what are you guys thinking? Tell me what you think. And then asking those questions. Tell me more. Why? Where did you get that? And so none of that can be captured on a standardized test. But that, to me, that's where those really admirable teachers who are stretching, you won't see that happening on a test score, but you might know there's a lot of deep thinking going on in this classroom.
Well, I'll add something really practical, as you and I are both former classroom teachers, and I'm going to think back to a practice that I tried to employ as a teacher to push me to help stretch my students. And one of those practices was, and I know I'm preaching to the choir when it comes to educators, but I'm just going to say it out loud, was looking at my own levels of questions. So I know I need to understand what my students are learning, not just through my assessments, but even through the questions I'm asking in discussion. So how do I make sure that I'm asking a level 1 question, that I'm being able to get the facts from them? Do you understand the facts we've just been studying together? But 2, I need to ask a question that helps me see them interpret and analyze. Can you go deeper here with this and help me understand how this applies to this? And then that 3rd level is, all right, taking that information that you have and that interpretation or analysis you have, how's this work if you apply it over here? How does this work in application? And I know that's different from subject to practice, but as a former instructor, I would push myself to have those kinds of questions ready so that I'm stretching my ability to find out what they're learning too, Jen. And so you're right. This could be a book. What a great question that this was. So thank you, listener. Jen, go ahead and wrap this piece up.
Yeah. One more thing I would add, Will, is we should revisit this. We should do a full episode on this because I think it's important. And to that listener, stay tuned. And I'm not saying her by name just because we didn't ask permission. I would love to. She's a very good leader in a very high performing school. So we'll get permission from her and revisit this.
Well, Principal Matters listeners, you're probably asking that same question about your students and about your own learning that's happening within your classrooms or the way that you're providing that support to teachers too. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Jen and I are certainly not the only ones that can answer these questions. Or you may have your favorite resources. So share those with us too. And I think we will visit this again, Jen.
Yes.
But I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this Q&A with us. And I want to just thank Palo Alto High School and Principal Brent Kline for bringing these wonderful students to today's conversation. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. Research across 45 states shows that IXL schools outperform other schools on state tests. With IXL, you get a personalized online learning and teaching solution that helps you improve achievement, empower teachers, track progress, and more. This one platform for K-12 helps teachers accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically adapts to ensure each learner is always supported and challenged at the right level. IXL also provides every student with a personalized learning plan to help them close knowledge gaps effectively. One of my favorite things about IXL is their personalized test prep tool. For exams like the SAT and ACT, IXL will analyze a student's most recent score and generate a custom list of skills to help them boost their scores. If you want to take the load off your teachers so they can do their best work, IXL can help. Learn more at IXL.com/PM.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week, we're going to be talking to my special guest, the Palo Alto Principal Advisory Committee leaders, with my friend, Principal Brent Kline, and his students, Brian, Sione, and Amalia. And I'm just going to ask just straight in. I'm not going to read any bios. I'm going to ask each of you to do a quick introduction, your grades, and what your role is in leadership at the school. So I'm going to start with your principal so folks can hear his voice first. Mr. Kline, give a quick intro.
Hi, Will. So nice to see you, and welcome back to Palo Alto High School virtually today. I'm excited to have this conversation. You're going to hear from the Principal Advisory Committee, or we call the PAC. They're called the PAC Executives, and it's a new concept this year. Maybe we can talk about it later, why I have the PAC Executives, but I'm going to move to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, so my name is Brian. I'm a junior here at Paly, and I've been on the PAC for 3 years now, so all 3 years of high school, and I'm excited to be an executive member this year, and it's been great so far.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Amalia. I'm a senior at Paly, and this is my second year in the PAC as well. Just like Brian, I'm super hyped about all the cool things we've done this year and what's to come.
Welcome.
And good afternoon. My name is Sione. I'm also in 11th grade like Brian, and this is my second year on the PAC. And also, just like them, I've been really excited to experience being a PAC executive and also going through all the PAC meetings, stuff like that.
When I first met Mr. Kline, it was back in 2020 because we connected during COVID, and I've had the privilege of becoming his friend, but also working and coaching with the other administrators in Palo Alto High School. I've been to your building. I've been able to meet the staff and the teachers there and do some professional learning within your community. And so first of all, just so listeners know, Palo Alto High School it's a beautiful facility with a tower building that sits at the front of the campus that just really marks the history and the beauty of the place where you guys live. But one of the first things that Mr. Kline talked to me about was how important it was for him to have the input of the students whom he's serving. What was it like for you to go through the process of joining the principal advisory committee? And I'll start with you, with that first question for you, Brian.
So for me as a freshman, I'm kind of in an interesting position. I wrestle full time since eighth grade, and I've always wanted to be in some form of leadership position in school. But the ASB program here is like a class period, and it kind of does things outside of school. So it was kind of a time conflict, and so I was happy to know that the PAC does things during school hours. And so we're able to get things done on campus during school hours without having to miss a class or without having to miss practice. So that was kind of like a plus and a plus for me. And then I'm always ready to share my ideas and hear from others. So it was just kind of a beautiful thing to hear about and learn about, because it's always been just an avenue to like get new ideas out there, absorb information.
Amalia, my understanding too is that you interview for these positions. What is that process like?
Yeah, so there is one interview. It's with Mr. Kline and one other administrator, and they basically just ask us, why we want to be on the PAC, what issues on campus we hope to address, and other things like what we love about our school and what we might change. So that was a really neat opportunity. Also to kind of get me thinking about things I'd want to bring to the PAC, changes I'd want to implement. And yeah, it's a very relaxed interview process, not stressful, and it was super insightful.
Sione, I'm curious, how often do you guys meet? Because you guys meet as a big group, and then you guys meet as an executive team. And I know one of your executive members is not with us today, and I think that's Charlotte, who's also a senior. And so I want to give her a quick shout out. But can you tell us what it's like when you guys pull together? How often do you pull together? And then how often do you guys meet as an executive team?
Yeah, so all together we meet as a PAC group like once every month. Usually we have our meetings on the last Wednesday of every month, depending on if there's a break or how the scheduling goes that day. And with those meetings, we usually have it over lunch. So we have another staff member named Miss Mary Ellen. She brings really delicious lunch for us. Like this Wednesday, it was turkey sandwiches and pumpkin pie, which is one of my favorite parts of the meeting. And over that, we get to discuss different issues or topics that we want to bring up. Like this Wednesday, we brought up how underrepresented communities or students can feel more welcome in AP or honor settings in our classes. Mm-hmm. And when we have a discussion topic like that, we just talk about one thing during the entire period of lunch, and we just have it open for all students to answer the question and share how they feel and their concerns with that issue. And then also we have PAC executive meetings. Usually it's also like Mondays or Tuesdays before we have the big group meeting. And all that is just to set up how we're going to talk or discuss things within our big PAC meetings. Or also we talked about how we can lead things with our staff meetings as well.
Mr. Kline, you've done this now for several years. And so for any principal that's listening to this conversation, what does it look like on your end? Because you're consistently organizing these. How much of your agendas do you work out in advance, and how much of them do you work out right in the moment with students?
I think you're doing a lot of both. A little side note, prior to this year, I would be the one that led the meetings. I would come up with the agenda. I would come up with the discussion items. And since our school-wide focus this year is to get a better understanding of what student agency looks like and how we could better improve the experience of students' ownership and engagement, I decided I should model that same approach that I've been asking the staff. And so this year I gave up my leadership role as the PAC leader, and then we created the PAC Executives with these 3 and 4, including Charlotte. I selected them because I knew that they would be great leaders, and I stay out of the way 90%. Now I'm working to 100, but I am truly letting them set the agenda, not only for the subject matter, but also for what happens during our meetings. And they run the meeting. I sat in the back corner at our last meeting and just listened. So.
Paly, I also understand that recently you guys took conversations from that group time together and then extended it to leading, really facilitating a faculty meeting. Can you describe and set up for me what were you guys trying to accomplish through that process?
Yeah, so Mr. Kline, I know he mentioned student agency and how that's one of his priorities this year, and that was the topic that we were focusing on for the entire faculty meeting. So the first thing we did was we met as a small executive team and we discussed the topic. We outlined, what the faculty meeting could be like. We had a couple subtitles, subsections of student agency, like voice and choice, and the best type of learning, the best way to structure learning. And then we brought those ideas to the PAC. So at our next PAC meeting, we essentially ran through the faculty meeting with those members just to get their, creative juices flowing, to see what they thought about this issue. Then we met again and kind of discussed what they said, what our PAC said. And then we finalized everything before the faculty meeting, which was on a Friday morning. We had the entire PAC there. And it was incredible. We had a chance to present before all the faculty, outline the subject, and then we split up into smaller groups. We had 1 to 2 PAC members per group, depending on grade level and experience on the PAC. And in each group, we answered 3 main questions. They were all conversations with the faculty. And we heard a lot of very insightful things from both students and faculty.
Sione, what was the experience like for you? Because when Mr. Kline told me about this, I'll just be honest. I said, I would have been terrified if I had been asked as a student to stand up in a faculty meeting, address a staff, and then sit in small groups and give them feedback about how student agency and student ownership would make learning better for me. What was that experience like for you?
I'm not even gonna lie. For me, you are right, Mr. Will. For me, I started off being terrified because I am a junior. I was placed by myself in my circle, meaning that I had 8 other teachers like sitting and listening to what I want to say about student agency. And so it started off as a little stressful and a little terrifying for me because everybody's a teacher. But then I think what our main goal, which was achieved with our meeting with what our main goal was to make sure that there's a relationship between the students and the teachers, so we don't have to feel as terrified like how I was in the beginning of the meeting, to come to them for anything that we need, like student agency. And so for me, at the end of the meeting, I felt really accomplished with what I needed to say. The teachers are very receptive on how I felt and like a lot of the ideas that I had. And overall, I think that our group led a pretty good discussion. I feel like it's really important that we called this meeting, even though it was a meeting, it was more of a conversation between us and our faculty members, and we kind of just connected on how we felt with school matters.
Brian, for you, I'm curious, what role did you play in that meeting, and what was that experience like for you?
So with these two up here, we kind of opened up the meeting. We kind of introduced them to ideas. I think it was very important that we opened the meeting with like a more warm welcome. I think if we kind of structured it and we were so like confined to structure and things like that, they would kind of feel like it's just another staff meeting. And I think the goal was to kind of deter from that natural like organization of a staff meeting to make them feel more open and comfortable sharing their ideas. More like at the smaller level, I think it was interesting, like Sione said, being one student with a whole bunch of teachers around you, it did get into like a circular conversation at some point where you're only sharing your perspective. And so it was interesting. Like it got to a point where I'm sharing my ideas and I'm listening to them and I'm like, I know this is how I think, but there's definitely like there's another side to the coin. And so I feel like it was good that we had a whole bunch of groups and a share out at the end, because you're able to hear not just your own perspective, not just your own point of view and your experiences, but what everyone else is going through as well. And so that did start with like a very warm welcome. So I'm glad we were able to do that.
You can correct me, Mr. Kline, but as you shared a couple of videos with me, was Brian one of the keynote openers there, or was that who were some of the students that opened that conversation?
These three were the
Okay,
opening
so you
act.
were the three on stage. Okay, because I saw a video of the opening
Yeah.
with the three of you on. So first of all, I'm just going to say on behalf of someone who's done a lot of faculty meetings, you guys are amazing. And not only did I think that, and did Mr. Kline think that, I also talked to one of your APs off the record, and they said the same thing. They're like, "Will, these." So I'm just going to brag on you three. They were like, he was telling me these guys are all going to be CEOs of companies someday. They're such amazing leaders. And so seeing them stand in front of a group of their teachers and just share their hearts and their minds, what was that experience like for you, Mr. Kline? And was there any surprises for you in this experience? Because this was a new format for you guys.
You know, I didn't feel like I was surprised by anything, because I knew that these three especially would set it up correctly. I've been impressed by their thoughtfulness in terms of learning more about this concept of student agency and how to empower our students, especially our student PAC group, on having those conversations. The I These three are natural speakers, in my opinion, and they need no script, and they're able to gauge the audience and to create not only appropriate environment for their voice to be heard, but also to create a conversation amongst a student and a group of 7 adults around a circle. To me, if I was amazed and blown away, that was those moments, seeing a freshman student talking to a veteran teacher of 20 years, just sharing and comparing their life experience to what they see and hear at Paly. And there was no criticism at all in any of the circles. It was just purely a student experience being shared and then creating a conversation with the adults. That was the awesome part of the whole experience.
I'd love to transition right now and ask the three of you, if you wouldn't mind, to share with anyone listening some of the essentials, some of the things that you communicated either from the stage or in those circles. What were some of the most important things you wanted to make sure that they heard on behalf of the student body about student voice and student ownership? And I'm going to let you decide who goes next.
You guys want to just go like this?
Sure, yeah.
So I think in the beginning when we opened it up, I even mentioned something about short-term versus long-term gratification. And I think that was a very impactful and important part of the introduction, because you can talk about student agency all day until you're blue in the face, but it doesn't really matter unless that student agency is being put towards something. And so when we talk about short-term and long-term gratification, I was pointing out that there are certain decisions that students are going to inherently make because we're all human. We're teenagers, we're developing. So student agency is important, but addressing the importance of also making decisions that are going to better your future is also just as important, if not more important. So really talking about that and stressing that importance in the beginning of the meeting was something that mattered a lot to me, and I'm sure it mattered a lot to the teachers, because I think it would have been kind of harder to absorb that information for certain teachers that want to see their students do well, to hear that they should back off and let the students do their own thing, as opposed to guiding the students in the right direction, which is what I think a lot of teachers aim to do when they become educators.
So let me dig into that for a second, Brian, because I want to make sure, I'm curious. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You were trying to convey to teachers, as you're instructing us, there may be, when you talk about short-term gratification and long-term gratification, there may be strategies you're using that give you quick results, but there could be other strategies you're using with us that are going to get more out of us. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, like I think a good example, like especially right now with the increasing use of AI, people that use ChatGPT to complete their assignments, while they may get the grade they want, they may complete the assignment, they may have 100% on their essay, that doesn't teach them the skills that they need in life. That teaches them how to get an A. And so when you emphasize the importance of skills in life as opposed to a grade on a paper, I think that's when student agency really becomes important and it actually matters. And I think whenever you're telling a story, whenever you're sharing ideas, you always have to convey what matters because at the end of the day, the whole point of giving a speech is to give ideas in a way that matters to the person. And so you can talk at people all day, but if it doesn't matter to them, they're going to forget it. So
Okay.
I think that's why.
So what I hear you saying is letting teachers know you can motivate us with a quick grade, or I can be motivated by fill in the blank, achieving whatever the chore is that you've given me or the task. I'm going to grow much more deeply if you develop the skills that I need to become a stronger learner, a better thinker, a better writer. And so it actually,
Exactly.
it may take longer. But as a student, I may not, you may not know we value that, but I'm letting you know that we do. I love that. What's another priority you guys shared? And I don't care who goes next.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about ownership, which is kind of that comes within the idea of student agency. But in my conversation, I had one administrator who was in a school district elsewhere in California. And we were talking about how ownership can come in the form of student choice. So when students have choices in, say, the level of difficulty of an assignment, that can help them feel like they have a lot of ownership, a lot of agency. One example of that is there's a certain district that has within each class an option to be in the honors lane or the regular lane, but it's all in the same classroom. So students are collaborating, they're chatting, but when it comes down to the homework or the test an individual takes, that's where the level differs, and it gives students that choice. So they can be like, oh, I'm not really understanding this material. I think I'm probably most fitted for this lane versus like, oh, I really get this. I'm going to make the choice to challenge myself. So that was one way students felt a lot of agency. And we talked about how that is super impactful for us students. We feel motivated. We're like, wow, we're succeeding. I'm so good at this. Like, I feel like I can just go above and beyond. And that was a big contributing factor.
Wow. So were you able, because that's obviously a priority that you shared with them, student choice that provides us agency to choose, like, for instance, the example you gave, maybe a higher level of practice than I would have had if I'm still trying to struggle with the general concepts. Did you guys then take those into those circles that you guys had when I looked at the video of everybody in circles?
Yeah, this was something I discussed in my circle,
Okay.
actually. So yeah, we expanded on that a lot. Another thing that came up was project-based learning.
Okay.
Projects are one of the prime examples of student agency, and that was what all the administrators and faculty in my group said. In my own learning, I was reflecting on this. I thrive the most in English classes or journalism classes where I can just write and I have all the freedom and choice to put on the page what I want. I do recognize, and we did talk about this in our group, that in math classes or more STEM-based classes, it can be more difficult to have agency. But nonetheless, I think we settled on the fact that projects are good. Even when they're incorporated in STEM classes, they can still give students the feeling of more choice and more agency.
Oh, yeah, this can go so many directions. I love it that you took that conversation directly to teachers who then are going to apply it with their subject areas, but in your presence, because you guys can provide that nuance that that those teachers would need to figure out, what is this going to actually look like if I begin to implement some of these, or if I'm already doing it, how can I do it better? Sione, what about you?
One of the values that we talked about concerning student agency was the importance of communication. What I believe is that when a teacher opens up being able to like communicate with the class, I feel like that really creates a welcoming environment for the student and for the student to want to be there in the class. They feel the need to be there. And also, I talked about how in a lot of classes, it depends on who the teacher is, but the way they communicate also, some people can be more harsh with the way they talk about assignments or the way they talk about how they're grading. And then on the other hand, there are some teachers that are more welcoming, they're more nice and positive with the way they communicate. And I feel like emphasizing that being more welcoming with the student is more important just because the student, so once again, the student can feel the need to be there in class and also feel like they want to put effort in. And yeah.
What I love about all of this feedback, because, and Mr. Kline knows this because he listens to my show and we've been colleagues for a long time, is you guys have put your fingers on so many of the important priorities that make a classroom a place students want to be. So whether that's, understanding the skills you would like to see developed in yourself, or understanding the ownership that you would like to be able to experience in learning. But then that third category, Sione, which is really relationship. I want to trust you, and I want you to trust me, and I want this to be a place where I feel safe and belong. And so that open communication, so that learning is not it's not something I dread. It's something I actually can look forward to within that context. Mr. Kline, I'm curious, anything you would like to add to the content you guys shared, or anything you would do differently in leading students and teachers into these kinds of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reflecting on kind of our reflection from that meeting, and it came down to there was 4 areas that were discussed and that came up as topics, consistent topics, and the biggest one about agency that you all heard in your circles that starts with the relationships with between the teachers and the students, and building that authentic relationship allows students to be more comfortable in taking their ownership and engaging in the class. The Amalia talked about the choice, and that's huge too. And it's not free choice in anything you want to do. I mean, but it's giving student choices on presentation topics or formats or approach to showing their understanding. The third connection that was made and throughout this whole experience was ensuring that we provide students with the why behind what they are learning. And so whether you're connecting it to a real life situation, or you're connecting it to a purpose that is meaningful to the students, and something that they could take and grasp and provide even further reflection on. And then finally, probably the most difficult is talking about how agency requires letting go of some control and trusting our students for responsibility. I'm probably going to be the biggest or the most difficult person to do that, but I'm sincerely practicing that with this team, and a lot of other things that I'm trying to do is just letting go and ensuring that I've developed not only the relationship. I mean, all of these 3 have been in it for at least 2 years, Brian for 3. And there's more students on the PAC that have been in it consistently for a few years. And it's just knowing who we are as humans and what our roles are and how we can support each other.
That was beautifully said. Relationships, choice, the why of learning, and then your ability as an educator to let go. Brent, you and I have known each other a long time, so I've shared this with other leaders, and I'll say this to your students. One of the things I asked you at the beginning of this school year was, what's one of the goals you have for this year? And you said, to dismantle my own power. I want my teachers, and I want my students, and I want my staff to be the ones making school happen. And so as we wrap up today's conversation, I would really love to just end by asking each of you to speak to listeners who may be thinking about, what would this look like in my school? What advice would you give someone, especially a leader, who's thinking about stepping out and taking the risk? What advice would you give them to consider in creating their own student principal advisory committee? Thoughts that you think that maybe they should consider for the benefits of their own students based on your own experience?
Yeah, the idea of a principal advisory committee started actually several years ago before I came to Paly at a prior high school, and it came out of creating a system to select a student school board rep, which there was none. It was just somebody, you would just pick one. I thought I'd improve that a little bit, so I actually turned it into an application process. And I had well over, I mean, just need one student school board rep. I think I had like 30 kids that applied. And so that surprised me. And I wanted to do something with those other students that wanted to be part of, being part of the system, being part of the school. And so that's where this idea of let's create this principal advisory committee so that they can have additional purpose. And so I've just taken that concept and just, brought it here to Paly with me. Why? Because it's important as a principal to maintain connection with students. I don't have a classroom of kids. I have a classroom of close to 2,000 students, but I don't have the opportunity to get to know each and every one of them. So within this group, I'm able to build a relationship. I'm able to also hear student experiences in a way that I probably wouldn't ever hear it if I'm just in a classroom or just in a hallway, because they won't know who I am. These students, I believe, know who I am and are comfortable sharing anything in terms of their relationships with teachers, relationships with other students, or with community experiences. And that's what your ultimate goal is to try to get that authentic student voice, that experience etched in my head, so that's where I initiate all of my change or my ideas. It's based off their experiences, not what we assume their experiences are. And that's exactly why they came to our staff meeting, because we had professional development earlier, and staff members were trying to guess, I guess is a good word, what student agency meant to the students. And so it was only natural, let's bring the students in so that they could share exactly what student agency means to a student. So anyway, long story short, it's the best way to hear students authentically, and by developing the relationships, you're going to hear the truth and not what you want to hear.
Sione, I'd love to ask each of you, but I'll start with you. The same question. What advice would you give to someone out there who's considering starting this in their own school?
Yeah, I would tell them to. This is gonna sound so weird, but I would tell them to do it. I feel like straying away from an opportunity like that is bad, only because I feel like our committee has opened up a lot of relationships we built with Mr. Klein. Without the committee, I feel like, or because I wasn't on the committee freshman year, I saw Mr. Klein as like a scary guy, somebody who only works in the office, someone who doesn't talk to any students and things like that. And I feel like now being part of this committee, it opened up a relationship between me and him, and it allowed me to, once again, like he said, feel more comfortable with sharing my ideas. And the main purpose of me being on this committee is to represent a lot of kids who feel underrepresented. And so I feel like if I represent those ideas and a lot of the things like that they want in their voices, I feel like a lot of it is just a lot of ideas being heard. And I feel like that tackles a lot of problems that a lot of students face between students versus teachers here at any school, really.
Amalia, go ahead, Brent.
We wouldn't have been able to do that duet we did last year
Oh,
without
yeah.
knowing
Forgot
each
about
other,
that.
right?
Did he tell you about that?
That's another video I'm going to have to see. Amalia, what would you say to anyone considering starting a PAC at their school?
Yeah, I would say two things. So one, to echo what Sione said, I think having diversity of thought and diversity in terms of the actual students is kind of integral. The reason I joined the PAC was also to give Black students a voice on Paly's campus, and I feel that on the PAC, it's such an open place, and I'm able to share my experiences and hear others, all types of students, and I think that's super valuable for both for Mr. Klein, for the principal, and for us students. It's really important to know what others are going through, so definitely do it for that reason. The second reason, and the second thing that you should consider thinking about implementing this, is to make it a very honest place and encourage students to share what they believe, even if they're afraid that it's not the right thing to say, even if they might be afraid of what the principal might think. I think honesty is super important, and honesty is how you're going to get the best discussions and the best tangible results out of a thing like a PAC.
Brian, you get the final word.
So I'm sure you can tell I like to talk. I talk a lot. It's like since I was a little kid, I started talking early. I haven't stopped since. For me, that's how I am. But I have a lot of friends or just classmates in general who don't have that same inclination to speak up and speak out. And so at a student level, you're going to hear more students like that. You're going to talk to them. You're going to interact with them. You're going to most likely befriend them. At the teacher level, they may not ever hear from a student like that. And so having a forum like a PAC allows for students that are constantly interacting with students like that who don't always exercise a voice, who don't feel like they have a voice. It allows them to speak out, not in place of them, but give their perspective. And so if you're always getting the perspective of someone like me who loves to speak out, who loves to give my ideas, you're not going to always get the full picture. You're not going to get the full story. And so I think something like the PAC, who doesn't just select the students that are always speaking out, it selects the students that have different ideas, selects students that want to share but don't always want to share all the time, you know. So I think having a PAC doesn't just open the voices for the loud voices, it opens the quiet voices too. So I think I really appreciate that.
Well,
can I just say one thing?
I was going to ask you as we wrapped up, Mr. Kline. I know I said Brian could have the final word, but I want to make sure that we are able to make sure that you're able to say those other things.
Like, no way, man. Amalia reminded me that I think I had probably 90 students that applied for this year's PAC. It's kind of grown every year. I started with 16. A couple years back, I added 20. This year, it's 25 because it's just so many wonderful students. They not only do they apply, but there is the interview, which is just really a conversation, and that's important to do because you want to. The reason why I do the conversation is I want students that want to talk. And that understand that this is about your voice and sharing your opinion. And you get that from interviewing a student. And so I just want to add that's an important piece to it to ensure that you have a group that's functioning at a high level and with strong communication skills like all three of these students that you heard today.
Well, I want to say a huge thank you on behalf of the Principal Matters community to all four of you. Thank you for the opportunity to learn from you. And I'm a summarizer. So as we summarize, I just want to say to listeners, if you want to create a place where you can create advocacy on behalf of students while building trust with them, if you want to create a place where diversity is an emphasis, not just an intention, but an action that you take, and a space where you create honest and safe opportunities for students to give you feedback. And if you want to create a space where student leaders can be the voice for those who may not speak up for themselves, then you need to consider how the priority of developing student leadership, encouraging their voice, becomes one of your own priorities in leadership. So thank you so much, Palo Alto High School, for the way you guys have modeled this. And Principal Matters listeners, please reach out if you want to reach out to the school or to Mr. Kline for more information. I'll put his contact information in the show notes. But until next time, thank you for doing what matters. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.